Ready? Okay. I would like to call the January 14th meeting of the Zoning Commission to order. Would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Sabo?
Here.
Mr. Casper?
Here.
Mrs. Himmeline?
Here.
Mr. Epstein?
Here.
Our first order.
I move Mr. King in absentia for that position.
Mr. King, I think he is currently the vice chair. Is there anybody else who would like to be nominated for vice chair? Okay, we have a motion. Do I have a second for that?
Second.
We have a motion and a second for Mr. King to continue as vice chair. We'll consider nominations closed. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Epstein?
Yes.
Mr. Casper?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mrs. Himmeline?
Yes. Mr. King is approved. And then we need a secretary. Who is currently the secretary?
Okay, it's freaky.
I believe it's Mr. Casper.
Mr. Casper? Okay. Would I have any nominations for who the secretary is?
I move Mr. Casper's done a fine job.
He's done a fine job. I would second that nomination. Are there any other people who would, anybody else like to nominate for secretary? Hearing none, call the roll.
Mr. Epstein?
Yes.
Mrs. Himmeline?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Casper?
Yes.
Congratulations to both of you. Establish your 2015 meeting dates. Is there any reason not to stick to the schedule that we currently have and the time we currently have? Second Wednesday, 6 o'clock throughout the year. Okay. And you can see to us that there's a calendar that's, do we need to vote on that? We do. Okay. I would like a motion to approve the calendar for the 2015 year as being, the Zoning Commission meetings will be on the second Wednesday of every month, starting at 6 o'clock.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I have a second? Mr. Sabo seconded that. No other comment. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Himmeline?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Casper?
Yes.
Mr. Epstein?
Yes.
We have no old business that is carried over from 2014, so we start right away with new business. And our first item is a zone change request from C2 General Commercial to A4 Rural Residential for the property located at 2252 Heisler Road. And I'm going to turn it over to Daryl if you want to walk us through this.
Sure. The subject property was originally part of a larger parcel, 7654 Bancroft Street, on the corner of Heisler Road and Bancroft Street, that was rezoned to C2 General Commercial in 1963. In 1969, the northern 2.1 acres of this lot were split from the original to form two new parcels fronting on Heisler Road. In 1994, the southern parcel of these two lots, 2240 Heisler, was rezoned to A4 Rural Residential to allow the property owner to build a single-family dwelling on the lot. This left the subject lot as a standalone commercial property amidst residentially zoned properties. The applicant is requesting this zone change from C2 General Commercial to A4 Rural Residential to conform to the nearby residential properties and preserve the residential character of Heisler Road. The Sylvania Township Land Use Plan 2007 update advocates neighborhood commercial uses for this section of Heisler Road. Sylvania Township zoning staff recommends approval of this zone change request from C2 General Commercial to A4 Rural Residential. While the request is not consistent with the land use plan, it is consistent with the surrounding properties and would remove the possibility of a commercial use happening amidst a single-family neighborhood.
And I believe it's also been through the Lucas County Planning Commission, and they recommended approval to.
Yes.
Okay. Is there anybody who would like to address this issue to the Zoning Commission? Comment on this one? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve this zone change request?
I so move, and Daryl, did you have some additional recommendation on this?
If I did, it would have been whatever was on the
report?
Lucas County Planning Commission staff report. I don't recall they had any.
I know there were a lot of recommendations for the second one tonight, but
Yes. No, there were no recommendations, no conditions from the Lucas County Planning Commission.
Did we get a motion? We have a motion? We had a motion. Do I have a second? Motion and a second from Mr. Sabo. Any additional discussion? Seems like it makes a lot of sense to me. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Casper?
Yes.
Mrs. Similai?
Yes.
Mr. Epstein?
Yes.
Motion is approved. Our second one is a zone change request from A4 rural residential to R2 PUD residential planned unit development for the property located at 3427 North McCord Road. And Darrell, I'll let you walk us through this one again.
Sure. The applicant is requesting a zone change from A4 rural residential to R2 PUD residential planned unit development for the undeveloped property located at 3427 McCord Road, rear, in order to develop a 13-lot, single-family subdivision to be known as Carytown North, Plat 3. Approximately .9 acres on the east end of the parcel fronts McCord Road and contains a single-family dwelling. This portion of the parcel is currently zoned RA suburban residential and will remain a separate parcel should the subject zone change request be approved. The subject of this request is the rear 4 acres fronting Ridgewood Trail. The 13 proposed lots would measure 62 feet frontage by 150-foot depth for a total lot area of 9,300 square feet. An approximate 67-foot wide common space runs the entire length of the northern property line. This area measures 1.3 acres and comprises 31% of the parcel. This exceeds the minimum required amount of open space per the Sylvania Township zoning resolution of 15%. Section 2002 of the resolution permits a maximum of 4.65 dwelling units per gross acre in an R2 PUD. This project represents a density of 3.25 per acre. By comparison, the neighboring previous plats of Carytown North represent an approximate density of 3.21, and the nearby Cary Woods subdivision has a density of approximately 2.94 dwelling units per acre. Additionally, the Sylvania Township Land Use Plan advocates a suburban residential density of 2 to 6 lots per acre for this area of the township. Sylvania Township zoning staff recommends approval of the zone change request from A4 rural residential to R2 PUD residential plan unit development for the property located at 3427 McCord Road, rear. Based on its consistency with both the density of nearby residential subdivisions as well as the recommendation of the current Sylvania Township Land Use Plan. Further, this recommendation of approval is predicated on the applicant meeting all of the 34 conditions. These conditions include the original 28 in the online version of the Lucas County Plan Commission staff report, as well as the 6 conditions from the Lucas County Soil and Water Department that were not received in time for that report, but were presented to and approved by the Lucas County Plan Commission on December 17th. That board discarded the below items, number 32 Stubb Street and number 34 Public Sidewalk, for approval of the zone change request. However, the Sylvania Township zoning staff, in concurrence with the LCPC staff, strongly recommends these conditions be required as a basis of approval. Resolution 9801060, passed by the Sylvania Township Board of Trustees in 1998, requires that new developments or redevelopments of properties in Sylvania Township have pedestrian access. Additionally, there already exists a public sidewalk along McCord Road. A sidewalk along the subject property would enhance connectivity and promote public health and safety.
Are there any questions for Darrell? I have two.
Sure.
You talked about the stub road and the sidewalk. The sidewalk's pretty easy. Where would a stub road or...
I don't know that the Lucas County engineer has a particular spot that requires that. Just the fact that there is one. Let me go back to that screen. The best one, I guess. Just that there would be one connecting to the adjoining northern property, should that ever be developed.
Okay. And then we had gotten something about wetlands
Right, I
What's
received
the issue with-
today, I passed on to you the letter I received today from the applicant, or that the applicant received from their wetlands consultant regarding the wetlands on the adjoining property. I mean, she does feel that there is significant wetlands there, but she also acknowledges that she was not able to go onto the property
Right.
to inspect it.
And that was from the applicant? Or
Right. Well, from the wetland consultant
Okay.
to the applicant.
Okay. And does the person that owns the house in the front, they're working with a developer? They own the
They
whole
own the
property?
whole property.
Okay, so they're working
At
with
this
somebody
time.
to develop it. Okay. Looks like there are many people that are interested in this. What we will do is, it looks like we have a gentleman standing at the podium who I presume represents the applicant. We'll let him speak first, and then we'll let other people who might have comments come to the podium. We'll ask everybody who comes to the podium tonight, to please state your name and address, and do not speak from your seat, please. This is recorded, and we'll ask you to come to the podium. Go ahead.
Thank you. My name's Jerry Parker. I'm an attorney and I represent the applicant, Mr. Markowitz and Allen Properties, Inc. With me is the consulting engineer of the project, for the project, Brian Retar. He's here as well to answer any questions. There are really two issues that are really quite simple that the Lucas County Planning Commission addressed and concurred with us on. If we could have that, maybe I could show you here, unless you've got this right on the screen, the actual PUD.
The site plan?
Yes.
Yep.
You got that up there right on PUD. Okay. If I may come up here, it'll be a lot easier. If you could move it. We're developing, obviously, this property. The individual that owns this property also owns a house here.
Actually,
Can you get that over there? There. She's retaining that, okay? So I think there's some misconception about, let's go to the easy one, I think it's the easy one. The elimination of sidewalks by the Plan Commission at the county level. We asked for the sidewalks to be eliminated across her property. We're not going to buy this. We don't own it, won't own it. We have no problem with putting sidewalks on our property. I think there was a misconception and actually a misstatement by the Planning Commission to eliminate those sidewalks. What we wanted was not having to put this sidewalk in, but certainly sidewalks along the property that we will own and develop. The second issue is really this issue of this stub street that was envisioned to go up to this area. If you could go to that area, was probably the best thing that you had there, Darrell. But you can see that this land here, the whole purpose of the stub street, initially back in '94, this is a buffer lot here that we're buying that was put in to prohibit anybody that develops this to tap this street and the utilities. So we're having to pay right here for this 1 foot or 2 foot stub, they call it a buffer lot, or it's a private lot, and in there is a buffer lot here. But to extend a street here, would go right to the middle of this pond almost. This is all wetlands area, and it goes nowhere. The other thing that's true, and as importantly, this property has access to Blossom and Pecora. I think there's a street right here. So there's no need to extend this street to give this property access. One, it's inundated with wetlands. As we showed you in your report, you'll see the delineation of it as best she could get it. And secondly, it has access from this street and McCord already. So that to extend that is not going to serve any purpose, and that's the reason the county eliminated the stub street. I understand the principle of making sure properties don't get landlocked and providing for future development. But in this case, this land is unusable. If it was, it would have been developed before now. And here's a huge pond, as you can see, with a private residence. And as you see in the report from our consulting engineer, to disturb that, and the mitigation would cost millions, not millions, the mitigation would be prohibitive to try to mitigate the damage by taking out the wetlands in that property. So consequently, we're asking that that condition be eliminated
and that the Planning Commission, Lucas County Planning Commission staff and county recommendation be adopted on that issue. But we have no problem with the sidewalks. Other than that, we have no problems with the conditions that have been set forth by your administration. Now, I might point out to you that if you look at the proposed lots here, they're equal to the size in terms of frontage of the lots directly across the street. Our lots are 60 feet by 100, I'll get my glasses on, I think they're 150 feet deep. They're the same width, for the most part, as these lots here, in terms of their size. These might be a slightly deeper, but I can't read that either, but they're identical. The density is identical. This is not an overly dense development of this piece. The density, I think, is 4/100ths of the difference. So we're not putting more homes in here than you have in this property. So, and that's why there's a recommendation for the R2 PUD, because it's consistent both in density and use with this property across the street. Now, as terms of lot prices, the lot prices are going to be the same that these people paid for theirs. I believe they did, anywhere from $49,500 to $55,000 per lot, which translates in most instances to a purchase price for a home from anywhere to $250,000 to $350,000, dictated by the lot price and by the size of the lot. It's going to be a nice development. Will it look exactly like Carytown North? No, it won't. But it'll be commensurate in terms of lot size, prices of the lots, and for all intents and purposes, prices of the homes. Are there homes in Carrington that cost more than $300,000 or $350,000? I don't know. I presume there are, but there's probably some that cost less. But that's why you have a recommendation for approval. In terms of, that's really where it's at. I don't see any other issues with the development unless you have any questions for us. But the buffer lot's the main one because it doesn't go anywhere, and that property is undevelopable, and that property has access on both east and the west end.
Are there any questions for Mr. Barker?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
If there are other people who would like to address this issue before the zoning commission, I'd ask you to come to the podium. Again, state your name and address, and you can express your thoughts, concerns, support for the project.
Geneva Rogers, 6809 Ridgewood Trail. And I think probably my concerns should be addressed primarily to the builder, and I don't know who the builder is here. Oh, okay. Then you're to whom I'd like to address these. I think I read somewhere up there where these will be single units?
Yes.
Okay. Are these going to be condos, or are they going to be villas?
They're going to be single-family homes.
That doesn't answer my question.
They're not condos.
Okay. All right, because there's a difference, and there's a difference in ownership. Okay.
Correct.
Now, as I understood, you're going to attempt to put in 14 units in there? 13, excuse me. I misunderstood or got the wrong information. Okay. So 13 units in there would mean 13 curb cuts. I'm going to stop right there to ask you, your curb cuts, can we be assured that they wouldn't be directly across from our curb cuts? That's the first question in this.
You're talking about
What's the difference in
driveways?
getting in and out?
Talking about driveways? When you talk about curb cuts?
Correct, correct, yeah.
I don't think there's any way to ensure that.
Well, I'm sure as a builder, you've been up and down Ridgewood a lot to assess it. Ridgewood Trail is not a wide street. It's not a big playpen, okay? So if you're going to put 13 on this side directly across from the 13 on this side, we've got a little problem. So that's one issue. if you say there's 13 driveways that you're putting in, conceivably, that would be 26 cars going in and out into our neighborhood, as we already have what we have going in and out. I don't know about the upkeep of our streets there. We've got a tremendous amount of traffic from Presentum, from Lowe's, from Myers, and we're going to add all this. Okay? Okay. Now, I don't know if you want to address those before I go any further.
The density is the same as yours. So what you're saying is you have yours, we can't have ours. The density
No,
is the
that
same.
is not what I'm saying.
The density is the same. We are not putting any more dense development than what you enjoy. And that's why we're having, that's why this has received the approval of the planning commission and the state. It's the same density.
The streets were designed for that density.
It's
For
the
them
same
to be
density.
directly across from each other?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Now, we are rather a mature population in there. And to whom, what is your audience going to be?
We're going to build and list our properties with a realtor, and we don't discriminate. So we can't tell you who's going to buy and who's not going to buy and how old they're going to be.
Okay. Okay. We're called Carytown North. What are you going to be called?
The legal description of what's existing is Carytown North Plat 1 and Carytown North Plat 2. We'd like to use the name Carytown North Plat 3.
Okay. So now, as you go into our development presently, we have a sign that says Carytown North in a little island, and the homeowners association takes care of that. Lights, whatever it needs done. Now, are we going to say Carytown North Plat 2 here and Carytown North Plat 3 here? How are we going to distinguish between these two?
How can you distinguish right now between Carytown North Plat 1 and Plat 2?
Okay, we don't have a distinguish between them, but they were all built at the same time, and they have all some kind of a general resemblance to each other, where Mr. Parker just said, are they going to be identical to the ones on the other side of the street? And he said, no, they're not. So there is kind of a difference in continuity and what it's going to look like. Okay? Now,
Excuse me. If we're going to have a conversation,
Yeah, I
Indian, could
was
I
about
come
there
up to the
too.
podium and speak into the microphone?
Yeah, I mean, the intent of this is for you to address the zoning commission with your concerns. It's not to do a question and answer with builders. I mean, that should have taken place.
okay, then I'll approach it in that way. I won't
Okay.
ask a question. Okay. My other concern is, we have a homeowners association, okay? Will you too have a homeowners association? Okay? My concern about that and questioning about that is, we have whatever our schedule is. It doesn't matter as far as garbage pickup, as far as mowing lawns, etc. Are we going to have like almost 5 days a week of this kind of activity going up and down if they are not coordinated in some way? So that's a concern of mine, and you can answer or not.
Why don't we get the concerns out on the floor from you and from other people, and then we'll let the builders make one last, comment, okay?
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anybody else who has concerns that they would like to
Not a concern, just really a question.
step to the,
It's up before, but-
name and address?
Bruce DeBoer, I'm at 6839 Ridgewood Trail. Really just my big concern is the size of the units and, square footage cost estimates. I know everybody, a lot of people in this room spend a lot of money on their house. I was one of those, so just not so much, I've looked at the builder stuff. I'm not terribly concerned about the quality, but I am a little bit concerned about the size of the units per square foot, that sort of thing. So maybe that could be
We can add that to
addressed.
the list of questions, we'll ask them to
Okay.
address.
That's all.
Okay. Anybody else want to step to the podium and pose questions? I mean, it seems to me the questions that have been brought up is, traffic, sort of the overall, will it keep the value of homes? Do you have a question, ma'am? Comment?
I guess mine is more of a comment. I live at 6857 Ridgewood Trail, which is just beyond that area.
What's your name?
Sandra Wisely. It really needs to be a different name. It is not the same kind of development that Carytown North was envisioned. We are not original owners. We bought in later. We were assured at that time that there would never be any building over there, which I think perhaps other people did too. So that has made us a little angry. So that was one concern, and not a real question. I am concerned about the comparables in the neighborhood. Our income tax has been fairly high in the last few years. We've had some reduction. But when the realtor goes to sell the place, or someone new looks at the place, and they look up comparables with the new development, that's going to be put an edge on us, and it's going to put less taxes in Sylvania Township coffers. I would hope that it would be a development that sort of focuses on, I hate to say seniors, how about veterans? So that I realize you can't distinguish, but it is we do have a lot of pass-through traffic. The light pole on the curve where we live has been knocked down several times a year by people going around that curve, coming through. So we try to keep it a quiet, decent neighborhood, and I'm sure the homes would be fine. But I am concerned about the economic part of it.
Anybody else want to come to the podium? Okay, we're going to ask the applicant to come back. I guess basically the issues that I've sort of picked out of the comments we've gotten is this issue of the single family versus the condo, an association doing some kind of regulation, the traffic, and will it be comparable values to the nearby properties?
Well, first of all, it's going to be single-family homes. These are not condominiums. As laid out there, they're lots. Okay, and so there will be an association in all likelihood to maintain the common areas just like across the street.
Okay.
In terms of the type of people who...
Let me just stop you there, because then just go clear this up. When we're talking single-family homes, you mean, my vision of some of these is you like share an abutting wall, maybe there's 2 units, these will be single units with space between them, sold that way, but with an association that might take care of common mowing, whatever.
Snow removal on the driveways.
People will pay an association fee to be determined to take care of.
Right. And in this kind of development, you're more than likely to attract people actually much younger than I am,
Right.
but still ready to retire. So it's geared toward people who are, the children are gone, et cetera, et
Because
cetera.
there's no real yard for kids to play in.
No, there's no yard.
Yeah.
It's not geared toward play sets and swings. So it's no different than what is across the street. As I said, the lot sizes are similar, the density is identical. The prices, as I indicated, are anywhere going to be from $250,000 to $350,000, dictated by the fact that my client's got cost involved in this. This is not an inexpensive parcel to develop. I don't want to tell you what the exact price was for the land, but it's not inexpensive. There's also utilities, so the price of the lots are $49,000, as I said, to $55,000 per lot, which translates into a price of the home to be at that range. In terms of a square footage is a little deceiving because you can spend $200,000 on a 1,900 square foot house. You can spend $350,000 on a 1,900 square foot house, depending on what you put in it. These are going to be homes, as I said, that's priced for that. I would say the minimum square footage in these homes is probably going to be 2,100 square feet. 2,119? 19 to 2,100 is the minimum, okay? Because most of them are going to be 3-bedroom homes, 2 to 3-bedroom homes, so you've got a minimum of those square footage. If somebody comes to my client and says, I'd like to put in a 3,500 square foot house, I don't think there's going to be any resistance to that happening. So, but it's going to be a quality development because it's dictated by the price of the lot.
Any questions from other members of the? One thing you brought up, just out of curiosity, and will admit, I know Carytown, not intimately, I mean, obviously everybody knows Carytown if you've been around. Is the intention to build all 13 at once or build as the lots are purchased?
We'll build as the lots are purchased.
I have a couple questions. Is this a...
You want to step back up to the microphone, please?
Is this a HOPA community?
Pardon?
HOPA community, 55 and over?
Not by law. I mean, it's not dictated. There's not something.
It's not?
No.
Carytown 1 and 2, HOPA community?
I don't know.
No.
Okay, so then anybody can buy?
Yes.
The other thing is issue about the traffic lady brought up. Is there parking on the street now in Carytown 1 and 2? Both sides? Now, the driveways, it'll house 4 cars outside the garage?
Most of them do, yeah.
And yours will too?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's so the issue of on the street isn't, and I don't want to bring up deed restrictions, but I have a feeling they want you to park in the driveway and not on the road.
Absolutely. This will be developed as an association with deed restrictions because everybody in that development wants to make sure that the next party next to them, just like you people do, want to mind their Q's and P's. In other words, they're going to take care of the landscaping with the association, the snow removal, so it looks nice. And so
Everybody holds their value.
Exactly.
Other questions from members of the commission?
I have a question for Darrell. The staff strongly recommended the Stub Road. What is the reason the staff is strongly suggesting that?
Just that if that property ever were to be developed, would prevent having just a cul-de-sac coming in from McCord. Yeah. We feel that the burden of proof as far as the wetland, and I'll acknowledge it probably is significant wetland. I mean, we all are somewhat familiar with that area of the township and the wetlands, but the burden of proof should be on the applicant that it is indeed significant enough wetlands that it would not be buildable. And I guess it's up to the board to decide if the consultant leaning over the property line evaluating the lot is a valid enough assessment of the wetlands on that property. And if I can switch gears here a little bit, on the sidewalk, there's sidewalks along McCord Road right now, and at this time, this is all one property, one owner. To not connect it all the way to McCord is just pointless. We might as well not have sidewalks in at all, if we're just going to have it.
So there's already a sidewalk in the front of the property?
Along McCord, yes. Not on Ridgewood Trail.
No, but on McCord, there's already a sidewalk?
Yes.
Okay.
And there's a
On the south side of Ridgewood, there's a sidewalk.
The problem I have is you've got to tell a property owner they have to have sidewalks on their property. Maybe they don't want it. I mean, we're not buying that property. Well, if it was one of the people in the audience and they had that property and didn't want sidewalks, they were entitled to maintain that. I'm not buying her property. I'm not buying this property.
The sidewalks would be in the public right-of-way, so they technically would not be on her property, it would be on the public right-of-way.
She's the one who wants to sell the property.
Yes. Yeah, at this time, it's all one property, one parcel, one property owner.
Excluding her house.
No, it's still, as of right now, it's one parcel, one owner.
Doesn't our vote pertain to the developed area, I mean, the area that's to be developed and not what's just sitting there? I mean, can we insist that a sidewalk be put on someone's property? They have nothing to do with that.
Well, it's the parcel that's being developed, even though they're splitting it if they get the zone change. It's still the parent parcel that's being developed. And we do have the resolution that the trustees passed in 1998 requiring sidewalks on all new developments.
The fallacy of that proposition is, I could play games with this and then split this off and brought in just this piece. Then what? Then you could still, see, I don't want to
Say do a lot
I would have done a lot split before coming to you. I'm not playing, I don't like to play games. I've been doing this a long time. So, I could have split it off and not had that piece there, and then this would be a separate piece, but that wouldn't even be in the picture. The point is this, we can't we're not buying this. This is not, we're not involved in this, and we're not buying it. So I don't know how you can, I already said that the county planning commission eliminated it entirely, and we went back in because that was a mistake.
Well, just as the sidewalk was put on McCord Road in front of our house, I'm sure the county didn't get her
Who put
permission
that
to
in?
do that. That was in the
Was
public
the public
right-of-way.
right-of-way and the county put it in, or
Right.
township put it in?
Who's got, if you were to put that in, who would shovel the snow and ice on it?
There's no requirement that the snow and ice be shoveled.
And we get into those kind of problems.
Any other questions from members of the commission? Any other comments or comments from members of the audience before we take this under consideration? You have to step to the microphone, please. Name and address.
Hirsch Feinblatt, 6901 Ridgewood Trail. I'm curious, you know, the property next to hers is now up for sale, 8.8 acres.
Right.
So, down the line, somebody to rezone that?
That's always possible.
Okay, and then if you want that stub, that's behind that 8.8 acres. That'd be west of it, or through it.
It would be through it, into it. That's the point of having a stub street.
All right, then my other question is, what happens west of this piece of land? After the 13th lot, what happens west?
You mean right here?
Yeah,
At this time, nothing.
okay, so who owns it? Yeah. I mean, that's not classified as wetlands, is it?
I don't know. I mean, that parcel isn't in play right now. So
Oh, right. Okay. I was just curious as to, you know, what happens with that stub. This other property is now up for sale since the first house
became in play.
Right.
And then what happens west of this property.
If this is approved, just like it is,
Mhm.
without the street, the land to the north is not going to be landlocked, right?
No.
Okay, so what's the purpose of this street then? That's one thing. The other thing is if they develop the property to the north, and they're going to have a road in, they're going to have to put their own road in.
Oh, sure.
So again, the stub street, I'm wondering what,
The purpose is to have connectivity, to have a through drive. If there were not a stub street, it's quite possible that the property to the north, if they developed that, it would just be a cul-de-sac going straight back. Whereas a stub street allows that flow of traffic, the connectivity.
I've seen where the street coming in, the stub street coming in, because this gentleman owns that property, and we're planning on developing that in the future. You better have a street run into it, but it doesn't even
Right,
belong.
quite often, yeah, that is
Yeah.
quite often the case.
But you're saying the stub street would go in the middle? Why not like it down at the end?
That's up to the county engineer. I'm not sure that they...
So-
And Brian, oh, didn't even see him sneak out, okay. He may know more about that, but
Now, did the county recommend the stub street
the stub street, yes.
in the sidewalks? No, the county,
The sidewalks is...
but the county recommended the stub street. The county eliminated the stub
Well,
street? Yeah,
The county, Lucas County Plan Commission staff, in their report, recommended the sidewalk and the stub street, and the Lucas County engineers also recommends the stub street.
but then
The
something changed.
Lucas County Plan Commission
Okay,
waived the side street and the sidewalk and the stub street when they recommended approval.
so staff people thought it should be there, the planning commission said no. You've looked at it, and what are your thoughts?
I think both should be there, definitely the sidewalk.
Okay,
If it's not going to connect to McCord, then why have it at all? You're just going to have a sidewalk that leads to nowhere on both ends. It's kind of pointless.
I can understand the sidewalks.
yeah, I do too,
certainly
I'm
agree
on
with
board
that.
with the
But
sidewalk.
the stub street, if the land's, it's not landlocked, and you have roads to the north, and the McCord Road, if someone develops that, they're going to have to put in a street.
Right.
So I don't see the purpose of the stub street.
I mean, the only point I can see for the stub street is, I understand your point about the court. I mean, one way in, one way out. And, but I mean, there's already sort of a problem in this neighborhood where people are going different ways in and out, and traffic out onto McCord. I mean, but I don't know that a stub street necessarily solves that problem, other than you got you have a choice of two driveways instead of one if you're on a court. So, we just did something similar to that out on King Road.
Right.
One way in, one way out for a piece of property. They were asking to be rezoned. And traffic's a concern there too.
Yeah, and that one ideally, it would have been great if they could have purchased the parcel
Yeah,
behind that so the street went through to...
right. One of them.
I believe it is, yeah.
Isley. What? Did you have, yes,
Yes,
name and address, please.
Dave Shell, 3432 Piney Point. In back of that property is the bike trail. Where do you have access to to the property north of the new subdivision, if you don't put that sub-street in? You don't have a street connecting from McCord to Persimmon other than Ridgewood Trail and the bike trail at present. There's no street back of that area. It goes all the way through to McCord.
Right.
Well, then how won't that property be landlocked?
It's not landlocked.
It would be, unless you put this, a street in.
Well, it fronts on McCord.
The property, if they build another subdivision in back, where the substreet would go to,
Right.
what property would that connect to?
The stub street would connect to these two properties.
Right, but there's no street that goes out to McCord off of those properties.
Right.
So how wouldn't it be landlocked, is what I'm saying?
If somebody was developing that, they would put a street in.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm envisioning one.
Somebody made the statement that that property was connected from McCord to Persimmon already, and it is not.
It's connected on, a property needs to front a street.
Right, it would have to be
You can't have a
fronted.
property when there's no street around it.
Correct.
It's useless, unless you have a street coming into it.
Right.
And this property is coming off of McCord.
I-
And if
I
someone
realize
develops
that,
it,
yeah.
they're going to have to put a road in.
Okay,
Yeah.
that wasn't what was stated before,
Yeah.
though.
Yeah, and the question is, do you put a stub street in to basically make an L or a U or
Right,
whatever?
make it kind of a...
Yeah, something like that. Or if you don't put a stub street in, then the property above it is almost relegated to a court, because there's no place to go north.
Right, they
To create
can't
a
go
stub.
north.
Yeah.
They could,
They could,
as Mr. Parker mentioned, Blossman,
they could go there.
there's a stub there.
There's- Right.
So they could, yeah.
I mean, we did delineate wetlands that go onto that property and our property in two areas. That's for sure. There is a delineation of those wetlands. And that's in the staff, that's in the, our consultant engineer's report to
We
you.
aren't sure the project can be, anything could be developed on the wetlands anyway.
We're not touching those wetlands, but what I'm trying to say is there's definitively wetlands on that property to the north, which makes development of it nearly impossible. Okay, now, we don't have a total delineation of that property, but you can see there's a relatively large pond on it, and there's definitely wetlands on it. And as I said, that stub street would go to a piece of property that never would be able to be developed. And as I said, it's not landlocked anyway. So, as a concession, we'll put the sidewalks in. If we can have some acknowledgement that the Planning Commission, the Lucas County Planning Commission was right on the stub street. I really do think they are, because of the wetlands issue, and it's not landlocked. And even though, it's going to cost some more money to put the sidewalk out to McCord, if it's in the right-of-way, that we have a right to do it without consulting the property owner, Mr. Markowitz will absorb that cost, which is highly unusual, okay?
Any other questions or comments? Discussion about stub streets or sidewalks or
No, I think I've heard it all.
any other comments? Okay, one last person. Name and address, please.
William Shoemaker, 3427 Amberwood Lane. That whole area that you call wetland, it is wet, but it's level. And if you put a lot there, a house on a lot, you're going to have water right up to the house. Now, when you discover that, who's going to pay to drain all of it? The level of the house will be the same as the wetland. It's wet, several inches of water. And as I look at it, it's all level. The whole wetland, everything is level. If you're going to drain it, who's going to pay for that?
Any other comments or questions? I guess it's up to us then. Closed discussion from the public. I guess where I'm at, without making an official motion, is the project seems consistent with the surrounding area. I think the sidewalks should be in. I am not personally convinced about stub streets. Any other thoughts from members of the commission?
That wetland issue, there's a lot of properties that have wetlands on it. You just can't build on the wetland. But when they dig that, the dirt goes somewhere, they're probably going to raise the house up, or raise the elevation of the house, which would compensate for any.
And none of the maps that we have indicate that the wetland really comes onto the project to be
Right.
developed.
And the wetland can come onto a person's property.
Right.
It's just you can't build it.
Right.
I'd like to make a motion that,
Go ahead.
to approve minus the substreet.
A motion to approve, that would include the sidewalks and not the substreet. Do I have a second for that?
I would second that with the sidewalk.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any additional discussion or conversation?
Sidewalk to include the extra sidewalk?
Yes, to include the sidewalk all the way to McCord.
If it's allowed.
We believe it's in the right-of-way and that it is allowed, yes.
No, I made the motion to approve. I don't know if we can do that,
To do,
to put the sidewalk onto that front property.
I think there's a
And the agreement's
counsel
there.
for the developer made a representation with respect to that.
yeah, they've already
We
represented.
have agreed, as I said, somewhat unusually, to bear the cost of putting that sidewalk in as a condition to our approval, even though it's not on site. As long as we have a legal right to do so without having to consult from the property owner.
And we are going to let you and Daryl work that out.
And the county engineer.
And the county engineers.
Because it
But
is
for sure, the
unusual.
13 people will have sidewalks, and we'll hope that it extends all the way to McCord. So I believe we have a motion and a second, and a common understanding of everybody in the room that that's what's said, it's on tape forever and in the minutes. Any other comments or discussion? Hearing none, call the roll.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Epstein?
Yes.
Mr. Casper?
Yes.
Mrs. Himmeline?
Yes,
Thank you all very much.
thank you.
And
I do not believe we have anything else for the good of the order. You will draw up a schedule of the meetings and email it to us so we can all put it on our calendars. And is there any other item for discussion? Hearing none, I will make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Himmeline?
Yes.
Mr. Epstein?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Casper?
Yes. Daryl, will be something for next month? Do you have a meeting for next month? Do you have something?
I picked this up this morning.
March, but not,
I know this isn't part of your project, but I'm concerned
One
about,
by the trustees.
okay, here you are here. This is your thing, not here. Mine stops there.
Yeah.
Recorded out here.
Okay, fine.